Hello everyone, Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Final Fantasy XIV, and today I actually watched my very first Producer Live Letter. Now the reason I never really watched one of these before is because I wasn't really caught up on content, so it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me to go watch something about the next bit of endgame that is being added into Final Fantasy XIV when I'm not even at the current level of endgame. And also I wanted to avoid potentially getting any of the MSQ spoiled for me, since the MSQ is one of my favorite parts of Final Fantasy XIV. However, since then, I've been engaged in the endgame content cycle, so I figured, hey, let's go check out what's coming next. Now, I already was aware of the fact that Bozjan Southern Front is going to be the next piece of juicy content that I'm going to be sinking my teeth into, but I wasn't aware of anything else that was going to be discussed during the live letter. So they talked about the Bozjan Southern Front, they talked about patch 5.4, which is going to bring the next bit of MSQ, as well as the next bit of the Eden raids, and some other stuff that is going to be coming to the game, and that is going to be arriving early in December. And then they also talked about UI design, and they talked about a bunch of more announcements and stuff. So I want to do at least 2 videos based around this particular live letter. The first one is going to be this one that's going to be focusing on the Bozjan Southern Front, or patch 5.35, which is going to be hitting on the 13th of October. And then the second one, we're going to be focusing on patch 5.4 because there's a lot of information to digest there as well. Now, the Producer Live Letter is actually completely broadcasted in Japanese. So I didn't really understand a lot of what was happening, and most of it came through secondhand translations from community Discord servers. I'd like to give a huge shout out to the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit Discord server, because a lot of the information that I was reading while, the show was going on was from them. So really appreciate the service that you guys are doing to the community by live translating everything like on the fly, which is insane. Yes, that was awesome. But anyway, let's get back on topic and talk about Bozjan Southern Front. So like I said, it is going to be releasing on the 13th of October, and that patch is going to bring not just the Bozjan Southern Front, but also the resistant weapon upgrades, because those are going to be, associated with Bozjan Southern Front, but it is not going to be exclusively in the Bozjan Southern Front, which is something that I was kind of surprised by. I wasn't aware that you'd be able to upgrade it outside, because I always thought that everything was going to be inside the Bozjan Southern Front. There's also going to be Sky Steel tool upgrades, although I can't tell you too much about that because that involves crafting and whatnot. That's going to be those are the crafter relic weapons, I believe, and I don't do a whole lot of crafting. Like I told you guys, I do crafting for beast tribes and whatnot. That's pretty much the extent of my crafting. And then they also said they're going to be adding additional housing. There's going to be 3 wards and subdivisions in all residential areas. So for all of you out there that are basically swimming in Gil and you still don't have a place to call home, you better be ready to log in bright and early when this patch goes live, so that you can go ahead and buy yourself a nice plot and get yourself a house, right? So there's going to be large-scale encounters in the Bozjan Front. We were already aware of this. They go into some more detail about these in some of the other slides, which we're going to be delving into. You're going to be banding together with 72 players and assisting the Bozjan Resistance in their mission to rout the 4th Imperial Legion. Now, it turns out that you can either focus on doing story quests, or you can take on extra challenges. The decision is entirely up to you. It seems that they're not making the story of the zone of the Bozjan Southern Front to be like this super hard thing to do. You can just go in there and do the story elements of it and not worry too much about grinding your weapon, or you can go in there and do the critical encounters and do all of the crazy stuff that you can do there and farm for, I assume, mounts, minions, glams, and all of that jazz. Some of the armors, by the way, they revealed during the live stream as well, and we'll be taking a look at them. So here's how the Bozjan Southern Front is going to be working. You do battle with the 4th Imperial Legion to raise your medal. Now, it's important to mention that not everything in the zone raises your medal. There's going to be skirmishes that work kind of like fates, and then critical encounters that are kind of like raid encounters from what they're saying. And they also say that with sufficient medal, you're going to be able to raise your resistance rank to help the front line push forward. Now, it's also important to mention that you don't raise your rank automatically. I mean, your rank goes up, but eventually when you reach a threshold, I assume, you're going to have to go into the NPCs of the Bozjan Southern Front and talk with them about, increasing your rank. But basically, raising your medal is going to start triggering the critical encounters, I guess. And eventually, you'll be able to storm Castrum Lacus Litore, which I'm going to be very curious to see how all of this stuff is going to work. Now, I've seen a lot of people say that this is going to be like the Baldician Arsenal in Eureka, and I've never really been that far to Eureka, but I've heard that, you know, even some of the more hardcore players never got the Baldician Arsenal, and I was like, wow, okay, so we'll see how it's going to pan out in the Bozjan Southern Front. And as you can see here, they are talking about specifically the skirmishes and the critical engagements that I mentioned previously. Players can increase their metal by joining special encounters in the Southern Front. Metal cannot be gained from killing enemies outside of these encounters, but Yoshi P did say that the enemies out in Bozjan are also going to serve another purpose, but they don't go too deep into what that purpose is going to be, because there's going to be like enemies out in the world that are not a part of these skirmishes or critical engagements. They will probably have their own objectives, but they're not directly tied to this whole metal mechanic and spawning critical engagements and so on and so forth. So the battles will be initiated after you meeting special conditions. Only a limited number of players can participate, with encounters ranging from 24 to 48 player battles. These are designed to be intense battles that take place in the field, and they are comparable to dungeon or raid bosses. And these particular encounters, the critical engagements, are going to award greater metal and rewards than skirmishes. So skirmishes, like I said, are going to be more like fates. They're going to be fairly easy for you to, you know, go around and do, whereas the, you know, the critical engagements are going to be a little bit more challenging. So the way that this is going to work is you just doing anything out in the zone. This is going to be an instant zone with up to 72 players. You doing anything out in the zone is eventually going to trigger a critical engagement. When this happens, every player in the zone is going to be notified with this message. Naturally, it's not going to be in Japanese. It's going to be in your chosen language. And the message basically says, resistance forces have initiated a critical engagement nearby. You may now request permission to engage the enemy. After this message goes out to all of the players in the zone, you will then be able to request deployment to, you know, take part in the event itself. Once you request that, they're going to select a certain number of players to participate in the event, and then when this period for deployment ends, you're going to be given the option to be transported into the battlefield to fight in the critical engagement. Then you have a brief preparation phase where you have time to kind of like form parties and discuss strategy of how you're going to be handling this particular boss. And this, I think, is going to be very hectic. A bunch of players just be like, okay, this one's the one that's got that crazy mechanic, so make sure that you're ready for it. I have no idea how this is going to work out, but so far it seems very interesting. And then they say when the preparation phase ends, battle begins, and you just like, you engage the critical engagement. Now, there's also something special about these engagements, because I don't know if all of them or only some of them, they will trigger a 1v1 engagement at the end, where, for instance, if you're fighting like this big boss, at the end of the engagement, one player will be selected for a final showdown with that boss. Again, I don't know if this is going to be all of them or only some of these engagements. And basically, you're going to get these special actions that you'll be able to perform. And I'm assuming if you perform the right actions, you'll be able to lead your party to victory. But it's going to be very interesting to see that whole thing unfold, because the rest of the players are just like kind of like looking in on what is happening during this event. And they say that it is going to be very hard for you to win against the final boss. Like they said when they were playtesting this, one of the developers was able to last like 15 seconds against the boss. And I was like, oh, okay. This seems like it's going to be just a little bit challenging. Now, the criteria for being selected to take part in the final engagement in the big 1v1, they say it's going to be tied with your performance in battle. So, depending on how many AoEs you avoid, you know, if you manage to avoid all of the AoEs, if you take very little damage, if you contribute with a lot of damage, or I don't know, maybe if you're able to maintain aggro and at the same time mitigate a lot of damage if you're a tank, because they also specifically said during the live stream that even healers will be able to participate in this 1v1. So I would assume that the criteria for the healers is going to be the amount of healing done. I don't know if it's going to be the amount of damage done, because, you know, healers in 14 are apparently very obsessed with the amount of damage that they deal. So I don't know which of these criteria is going to be applied to healer performance. We shall see how that is going to pan out, but it is definitely going to be interesting to see the final showdown, right? Now, they mentioned that if there are more requests for deployment than are permitted for an engagement, participants will be selected at random. However, it is possible for you to gain priority when you are selected to be in the engagement. Now, The reason why they're doing this is so that you don't just have people that are sitting in the zone, not doing anything, not contributing for anything, and then when the critical engagement shows up, they'll like, oh yeah, I'll take part. So the way it's going to work is if you contributed to triggering the critical engagement, and they're not telling us what those triggers are at this point, but basically, the more you contribute towards a critical engagement, the higher the chances are for you to be selected to take part in that critical engagement. And at the same time, there's also special items that you can obtain in the Bozjan Southern Front that allow you to get like priority in getting into these critical engagements. They're calling these, I think, priority tickets. And they say that it's like, look, if there's an encounter that requires 24 players, 25 players queue, and all of them have like a priority ticket, then, you know, it's still going to be random. So at the end of the day, there's going to be a degree to which you can influence whether or not you're going to be in a critical engagement. And then once you're in a critical engagement, the better your performance is, that is going to decide if you get to take part in the final 1v1 showdown. Besides all of these, combat stuff that is going to be happening, as well as there's going to be story elements in the Bozjan Southern Front, you're also going to be able to strengthen the resistance weapons, which are the relic weapons for Shadowbringers. This is one of the things that really interests me because, like I said, this is like the first relic grind since I've started taking Final Fantasy XIV seriously, because I never played seriously during the, Realm Reborn and Heaven's Word and Stormblood. So, Shadowbringers is the first time I'm like playing FF14 seriously, and I really want to engage in the relic grind. It is also the first time where my main class gets its own relic weapon, because my main class is the Gunbreaker. So after you gain access to the Bozjan Southern Front, you can also accept a quest to begin collecting items to augment their resistance weapons. Now, the developers said something about potentially you can use Tomestones of Poetics to get that resistance weapon grind. They talked about light farm, I don't know, maybe doing dungeons, stuff like that. Maybe doing like your daily roulettes or something is something that can influence how much materials you get to upgrade your weapon. I don't know, because it didn't went into specifics there, and if they did go into specifics, it was in Japanese, and I didn't read the specific translation of that. Anyway, the required items can be found both in and outside of the Bozjan Southern Front. After that, they also said, okay, let me show you some of the armors that are going to be available in the Bozjan Southern Front. So the first one that you're looking at here is going to be the tank armor. And let me tell you, I really like the way this armor looks, because the developers themselves said, we're making this armor look like it's had some use. And that's one of the things that I usually don't like whenever I have a character that's just got like this pristine armor. Like, I like armor that's been through the ringer, armor that shows that it's weathered, it's been used. It's it's got a little bit of dirt on it. Gritty looking armors. I'm more about that armor that's been actually used. And the Bozjan Southern Front armors definitely look like that. So the tanking armor there just looks completely amazing. And then for the other screenshots here, we don't actually know what the jobs are for these armors, because he didn't really reveal them. I'm sure that some of you guys just by looking at them can tell, but I'm still kind of like a noob, so I can't really tell at this point. But yeah, that's pretty much all the details they gave us on 5.35 actually, sorry. And I'm super pumped for jumping into the Bozjan Southern Front. How about you? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy it, hit the dislike button. Feedback is important. I'll be talking about 5.4 in my next video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.